Welcome to Organizational Sherlocks, the podcast where business meets psychology and your organizational puzzles meet their match.
Join us for captivating stories and practical solutions to unravel your toughest challenges.
I'm Dr. Elizabeth Fleming.
And I'm Morgan Ashworth, your guides to a prescription for business success.
Let's dive in.
How are you doing today, Elizabeth? How are our listeners doing?
Doing well, and I'm hoping our listeners are also doing well. How are you?
I'm doing great. Really excited for this podcast because we're going to get into a little bit of a case study on lean. And you're going to be able to hear a firsthand experience from me, actually. So this is Morgan, again, if you are listening and not watching. Ashworth Awards, the company I'm at, we do practice lean methodologies and we're constantly implementing it. I will admit we're a little bit newer in the past 3 or 4 years to true conscious implementation of lean manufacturing, but it's always been a natural part of our values, thanks to our values of sustainability and innovation.
Well, that actually is a great introduction because I would like to start there, if that's okay. And wondering if you can kind of give us a quick overview of Ashworth Awards. What do you do? Who do you serve? And then speaking of your values, the word in my mind is philosophy, and just kind of wondering when those lean principles really became part of your operational philosophy as a company. So I know that's a lot, but I'm hoping we can learn a little bit more about, who Ashworth Awards is.
Yeah, I'd be happy to. So Ashworth Awards, kind of, you can hear it in the name, awards. We're an awards-based organization. It started actually as Ashworth Associates Manufacturing and Wholesale Jewelers, Inc. That's our official name, but we do have a DBA of Ashworth Awards just because of, obviously that's a long name. A little bit hard
to say.
Yeah. Also, Ashworth Associates, that could sound a little bit more insurancy. So if you use the term Ashworth Awards, then you straight up know what we're making for products. So we do emblematic jewelry, and that includes awards, medallions, promotional products, any kind of branded items, marketing material, all the way through any type of recognition material. So we do a lot. I would say our most specialized product line is medallions. That is what we're most known for, thanks to our introduction into the running and road space with Boston Marathon. There's actually some articles on Ashworth Awards regarding that. Channel 5 News had done a really great conversation with one of our owners, Dan, and kind of walked through the factory and did a real cool, covering of Boston Marathon actually being produced at the time. And just got to know us. But overall, yes, we're specialized in medallions, but we do boast anything you really can think of creatively. I will say, we were a fully U.S. manufacturing unit once upon a time. Then we did split and we have overseas and domestic manufacturing units, but we actually really rebuilt in a new way with a new product line, our factory, starting in 2016, which then that line, Dimensional Steel Medallions, the only sustainable, fully recycled product and fully recyclable product that you'll find in the medallion space. We launched that in 2019. And obviously there's awards, pins, keychains, coasters, all that type of stuff that you can also make from it.
I joke with, I know I've said this to you before, but we need to get some organizational Sherlocks like swag.
Yes, we got to make some apparel for ourselves through Ashworth. That wouldn't be a problem whatsoever, I'm sure. I actually helped make sure our apparel product line was really kind of out there going. It's more of an add-on for a lot of our customers since we do specialize in, metal, wood, acrylic, but something else we obviously can do. We try to be that one-stop shop for our customers. I would say, though, when it comes to lean, lean's always been a part of manufacturing, whether you realize it or not. So I would say it's been a part of us since 65. You find the right timeline to go by, you find the right process, the right inventory, all of that you do find right off the bat with manufacturing. So I would say it's been a part of us since 65 when we were created. It's actually our 60th anniversary this year. But sustainability really kind of shone back through around 2010, with 2013 really trying to take us over the cusp of the limitations we felt we had with lots of our packaging material. Then in 2016, and then like 2016, we really heard those inklings of we want made in USA, we want sustainability when it comes to our product lines. So we really ensured to implement that, hence 2019. And now the lean manufacturing methodology to have a more specialized approach, thanks to experts we're working with, that obviously came in around 2020.
Absolutely. That's awesome. I think it's really cool. If you don't mind me asking, just a follow-up on that, kind of what was the decision or the reason that prompted you to even consider lean in the first place?
I would say, we were bringing in some, higher level manufacturing management at the time because of our growth. We were exploding in size in 2020, believe it or not. And that's because of our US manufacturing unit. A lot of people didn't want to get things from overseas, and though we had location like manufacturing units in both places, people preferred domestic. It was easier when it came to the supply chain. We saw all those shipping issues back in the day. It's also people were worried about the packaging from overseas, the material coming from overseas because you might have had COVID on it, right? It's crazy to think that was 5 years ago now. But so we did bring in management, and at that point in time, I was looking more into the CI, the continuous improvement space. I learned some inklings on lean when I was in school way back when, though I never specialized in it. But when our management came on and they had some specialties in lean, they were interested to truly implement it on a cultural base. And obviously me being involved in culture with the innovation and sustainability values said this is a no-brainer.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, I think that makes sense. I know, I'm not certified in lean or anything like that, but I've done some reading about it and have worked a lot in manufacturing companies as a consultant. So I've learned a lot of it and kind of just absorbed it through that culture, which I find fascinating, right? Because yes, lean is a methodology and a way of working, creating efficiency, right? But I do think it is also culture. It's building this kind of people-centric efficiency. I don't know. I can't think of all the words I'm thinking of, but I wonder if you can speak a little bit about that and kind of how you've seen the culture shift over time. From like a people perspective, I guess, more so than a process perspective.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, I can say most people want to be autonomous in some way, shape, or form in their role. They don't want to feel like they are just directed to do jobs or to do the typical black and white tasks and never grow or expand from there. Most people want to have some sort of autonomy. And so I would say that lean helps build that because lean's not just for the manufacturing unit. It's applied oftentimes actually to hospitals and like the nursing floors. They are huge into CI with lean. Obviously, we can see in the organizational development, IO psychology space, a lot of these case studies are on nursing programs or hospitals, something along those lines. So I guess it's a given that lean isn't just for manufacturing. But I would say on the people side, where we've seen the most change is we have people that want to give suggestions and really take advantage of our suggestion policy. But second to that, they're more interested in problem solving and wanting to help make decisions. I wouldn't say that people are overbearing in that, where they're trying to make decisions where they shouldn't, but I do think they're open to taking on more responsibility and more accountability, which is critical for succession planning too.
Oh, so absolutely.
Succession planning in the sense of someone's going to retire eventually, so someone's going to need to take their place, or if they want to, reach that job ladder that they're hoping to get. I do think it also takes a lot of pressure off of management to be the only ones solving problems. I know Bob actually mentioned, difficulty he had letting go in our last podcast and letting someone make mistakes. So I will say that overall, people want to be involved. They want to help solve problems. They want to give suggestions. They feel like they're making a bigger difference now. And so that's on the people side, but on the overall organizational side, I do think there's a little bit less pressure for certain people to achieve.
Mhm.
Is that general pressure is throughout the organization, not just on the management.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, that makes sense. Gosh, you keep leading into the next questions that I'm going to have. So this is perfect.
I know you so well. Why?
You must know me and kind of the direction I was going to take it. Okay, so I'm thinking about, with any change, right? At all. I mean, people don't like change all that much, right? And that can be a little bit hard. And so I'm thinking about, I know that you probably were using some lean principles, maybe informally at first, but kind of the introduction of the more formal lean process. I'm curious if you can talk about any like resistance that you maybe experienced when it came to that change, any surprises, things where you're like, wow, somebody really stepped up and took it under their wing, or ones where maybe it didn't happen so well. Like, I'm wondering if you can talk about the change of introducing lean at the manufacturing facilities.
Yeah, I do feel it's a shock for anyone to have to go through continuous learning, continuous training that's brand new. Naturally, will be people that are more open and so want to learn it versus people that are less open and aren't really, quote unquote, interested. The best way to do it, we took a top-down approach. It's very important for management to already have the training under their belt and to see it day to day before you start training their staff on it. So we'll say that that's a number one approach. Within the management team, when we first started this, the most pushback we saw was in time. So they wanted to learn it, but they didn't feel like they had the time to learn it. They didn't want to take time away from their general work. And so to build buy-in there, it was about prioritization and communicating that prioritization of tasks and how this is actually to help them down the road. So I talked about pressure. This was to help them down the road. So if I could help them, or another manager could help them reprioritize their tasks to be able to be a part of the training, then they're going to see greater success down the road. Long-term rewards versus short-term rewards. I would say that's where we found the issues, because the short-term rewards of using your time towards, the daily tasks versus the long-term rewards of using your time for training that will result in less daily tasks. I would say that's definitely the area we had the most trouble within the management team. In the end, we just gave them options for, if they wanted to work extra time and, get PTO or bonuses or whatever else out of that. Obviously, that would make them want to. So there was rewards for participating. You never want to make it corrective, but I did have to end up having a corrective conversation for someone that single-handedly chose not to attend, who was supposed to attend, and didn't communicate ahead of time. It's one thing saying, oh, can I reschedule my session for a later time versus just not attending in the first place. So unfortunately, there are corrective actions that sometimes have to take place when there isn't buy-in, when it's lacking. On the general staff side, so of any level but not in a leadership role, I would say that it was half and half. We had people that were super excited to learn. We had people that were confused why they were learning it, and then we also had people that just seemed like they were being a problem during the session, who we felt were kind of neutral to it. So with the people that didn't really understand why they were trying to learn it, I ensured that our manager in charge of the lean training discussed with these people and kind of created that motivation and that buy-in. Easily bought in after the fact. For the people we felt were neutral, but then came in and were seemingly problematic during these sessions, which I will say, we brought Bob in to conduct these sessions in his company, GBMP. We ended up having to have a discussion. Again, it was as a group. We didn't need to have individual conversations, but saying, you have to have respect for your trainer. You need to show that you are engaged, because if you're not going to be engaged, we're going to know who wasn't. And unfortunately, continuous training and growth potential is going to be reduced for that person. This is the culture that the organization is going to accept, and 95% of the people are going to accept. Well, 5% of those people are going to fall behind, will not grow in the organization, will not get continuous learning and improvement put onto them, meaning they won't have the ability for the company to pay them and pay for training for them. We're investing in people that way. So if you don't want to be invested in, we won't invest in you, but you also won't grow. Again, we haven't had to have corrective conversations there, but there was a general coaching conversation with that information included. So people had this awareness of, this is the way we're going.
Right.
95% of people want to go this way. If you're not one of those 95%, either get on board or you're going to be jumping ship at some point, because this is how the organization flows. It's already a part of us. Why not enhance it? But we haven't seen issues there otherwise. I actually got some great feedback after the fact that there were no more issues.
That's great. Yeah, I mean, I imagine that original launch, right, or the original training and discussion around Lean probably was more challenging than, say, bringing on a new employee today, because it's more baked into the culture at Ashworth Awards. So I guess I'm curious too, from your perspective, are there any like best practices or tips and tricks you could maybe provide our listeners around, how can you integrate someone into a Lean culture? After it's already been established. So a new employee joining the team, how do you find that it's best to get them on board and up to speed on Lean practices?
I would say the best way to do that is, well, first, if you have, some ready to go trainings that they onboard with. So that's one best practice is, there's always some sort of onboarding training that you might have to do on a computer. So implementing it, we actually have something called 2-second Lean. And so it right off the bat communicates it. In communicating the culture, you tend to always have a meeting with a new employee, whether that be HR, management, or both.
Yeah.
And you have that conversation of talking about our values, but then also talking about how we implement those values. And so you push it in almost under the rug, like they don't even realize it, that it's becoming part of them. And then third to that, I would actually say you start talking about it in the interview sessions.
Okay.
Talking about it. This is a part of us. This is who we are. So kind of get ready. And we hear really great feedback when we do that. I'm the last, person to interview, whether that be 2 interviews, 3 interviews later, whatever it is. Depends the role, but I'm the last person to interview. And when I do, I ask questions that have to do with our values without stating them, to see if this person is going to be a fit and align with those values, our mission, our vision, right? And so naturally, I try to make it more conversational with that. And so we talk about Lean, we talk about innovation, we talk about the practice of continuous improvement in our entire company, not just manufacturing. So I will say number 1 is interviews, but then number 2,
setting the stage a little bit, right?
Yeah,
like this is what's to expect.
And then give them their lines, right, in the implementation when you're onboarding. But if you have the opportunity to take advantage of additional trainings, I would recommend that. For example, we're going through another express grant with the state of Massachusetts to help fund these trainings with GBMP, and we're introducing it to even more people at work right now. So people that started later that we want to get involved, they're doing a class not at the moment, but they did a class in the past few weeks. And so it's just about taking advantage of any grants you might be able to get or continuous training. And once you have enough people to go through another training, do another training.
Right. That's awesome. I mean, I think that Lean, from what I've seen and witnessed, and again, my travels to different clients, facilities and stuff, like it can be so helpful. And I mean, yes, in manufacturing, absolutely. As you mentioned, healthcare too, another place. But in all honesty, I mean, I think Lean principles can be applied no matter what you're doing. The application may look a little bit different, but I think for everyone, it's worth taking a look at. What are the principles? What might it look like? And then how can I apply those things to, whatever work that I'm doing, or that my team is doing? Because there is a lot of transferability in some of those skills and those principles, which is pretty cool.
Yes, they transferred. I mean, we've talked about skills in general, your leadership skills, or really just parenting skills if you're a parent. So you transfer it into leadership. And so same thing if, we might be talking about Lean in the manufacturing sense, but this is transferable to your life, to the organization of your house.
Absolutely. I actually run with a colleague of mine. We do a training session or a series of training sessions on this idea of like one life and how you can transfer skills in the leadership sense from work to home and home to work. Even though we've probably all been told at one point in our life that we are we have to check our personal life at the door when we get to work. I don't believe that's possible, really. So that's something we've been doing. But it is kind of interesting now thinking about that and how some of those principles just kind of inherently became part of, or how some of the lean principles inherently became part of that presentation. So you're right. I mean, I think it's kind of all across the board. Although I would say probably maybe the biggest difference, and you can agree with me or not, I would love to hear your thoughts, is really about how you track success or how you measure the impact of lean initiatives. I think in a business sense, it's a lot easier. We're talking about profitability. As much as I would love to be paid to be a parent, I don't, that's not possible. I mostly just pay out as a parent. So I would say the measurement would be skewed, but I won't go down that train right there. But I am curious from a business perspective, specifically in manufacturing, how are you measuring the impact or tracking the success of these lean initiatives now, and maybe how has it changed over time?
Yeah, I would say, well, one part of lean is also called Kaizen events, when you have an event that's associated with innovating some area or some process. And I would argue that those Kaizen events are a really great way to gauge how effective these lean conversations have been, and the training to see what people come up with. A manager's there to, help and observe, and a member of GBMP is helping lead them at times, depending on if it's part of our grant or not. And so with that, we see a whole improvement that happens because of these lean trainings. And we see how well the individuals work together and what principles they're learning and how they apply them. So I would say the real life application, that's what we're seeing. That's what we're seeing the most. But we are gauging it within, employee goals, within their performance competencies. We are actually gauging that success. It's not like we're doing true surveys or studies, but I guess we can do a case study of the Kaizen event to see how well it does.
Yeah, absolutely. That's totally fair. I mean, I think there's so many metrics. I think we've talked about this in a previous episode, just how there's so many metrics. And I think we sometimes try to attach them to one particular thing, but they all are interconnected, right? And you can obviously look at profitability, and you can look at turnaround time and all of those things from a lean perspective. But I do think that as IO psychologists or IO practitioners, it's important for us to also look at, how is that profitability, how are, the turnaround times impacted by the people, and how is it impacting the people, kind of looking at it in both ways. Because in order to, I would imagine, in order to continue on this path of a lean philosophy and practice, it can't just be a one and done. It's not like, hey, here's what we're going to do, and then we expect everyone does it. There's got to be some continuous education or continuous improvement happening throughout. And so I think taking again a look at those metrics and saying, how do they fit into the bigger picture can be really beneficial in helping you to figure out where some of that education or training needs to come in.
Yeah, and you actually made me think of, within a Kaizen event, obviously we are analyzing what's our time savings, what's our material savings, that's the sustainability side of it. What are our material savings? What is our, the profitability, do we increase it? How much do we increase it by? I will say that we're constantly doing this. So even though we have specific Kaizen events, there tend to be just regular continuous improvement. For example, our powder coating unit, we, well, not me personally, but our team adjusted the settings of our powder coating unit to better collect the powder coat that was used. So usually you collect the powder coat so you can get rid of it. Well, we're collecting it in a way that we can actually reuse it and hopefully launch a sustainable powder coat line, because it's already been used. We might be able to discount it. We might not be able to, depending on, the process by which we have to work with it after the fact. But we're recollecting it so that we can save the environment. We're not going to just throw this out. We're going to reuse it in some shape or form. So that's a prime example right there. It's not taking more time to do. It's just that the setting on the machine's a little bit different to allow that to happen. And in the end, it's going to be better for the environment, for the earth, and provide another color, I guess you'd say, to our customers. So it's kind of a value add.
Absolutely.
Separately, in our cutting department, the machine comes with a certain setting when it comes to drafting and the separation between pieces and how many you can cut. Well, our laser operator back there, he actually managed to shift the drafting so that we were wasting less of the steel. And we do recycle the steel anyway, but we're getting more pieces per sheet than we could prior. And that actually allowed us to increase our profitability, but also save customers money in the end. And that's why these days our dimensional steel medallions are actually beating die cast pieces at the moment. It's like a typical basic die cast piece with tariffs is actually more right now, but before they were equal. You could give or take 25 cents depending on whatever you're doing with the metals. But our dimensional steel pricing is now beating die cast pricing because we're constantly critiquing and giving feedback to our own line and trying to change it. We're the only company that does these dimensional steel medallions. We're the ones that created it. And so obviously there's going to be tweaks. The line's only 5-6 years old now. But I would say that it's amazing to see it beating out the most original way to produce medallions and other promotional products as well, since we can do keychains, zipper pulls, jewelry, awards out of it.
Absolutely. Well, you brought up sustainability, which was something I was curious about as well. I know that that's a key initiative for Ashworth Awards is to be a sustainable company and being really committed to that. And I'm curious about how you have seen, maybe if you have a specific example or maybe however you want to answer it, I guess, about ways that lean has really helped reduce waste or improve environmental outcomes. How have you seen that kind of translate into that sustainability space?
Well, I would say like the laser and the powder coating examples, those are two prime examples that I can give. It's reducing the amount of waste. So for example, let's say we're cutting a certain size sheet of steel. I'm not going to give the exact size because I don't want to be given any.
We don't want to give away any, right? Like,
but
and all that.
We're going to cut a specific size piece of sheet of steel, and we're going to cut this size piece. Well, maybe we originally could get like 400 pieces out of the sheet. Obviously, the sheet of steel is expensive in and of itself. Domestic made, all that, which we love to see, and made out of recycled material. But so we can get 200 pieces out of it. Well, now with what our laser machine operator did back there is he adjusted the settings. So now we're getting 225 pieces out of it. It's only 25 pieces more, but that means that's out of 4 sheets. We've now saved a whole entire one because 200 pieces would be 5 sheets of steel for 1,000. Well, now it's actually 4 sheets of steel. So we're saving money, we're saving waste, and we're saving the customer money. And then the amount that we're recycling is reduced. And so while we're not making as much in the recycling of our product, that the shipping is less as well. So think of the carbon footprint of shipping. The shipping is for that piece alone to go back and get melted down and get re-rolled as steel. So there's a lot that goes into it. We might not see the immediate effects of saving the environment, but we know it is having a very positive effect on the environment. I'm trying to think of another example. There's just so many examples I could think of. I could talk a little bit more in line with the powder coating one. And sorry if you can hear my dog barking behind me. She's actually at the office with me this week. But the powder coating one, per box of powder coat, you might only be using, 70 to 75% of that box of powder coat. Well, a recollection, we now can take that 25% that's not getting used, and it might only collect, it was originally collecting like 10%. Now it's collecting more like 20 to 25%. It's collecting almost all of it. And we can put that back in and reuse it in some way, shape, or form. And so we're not throwing out a quarter of the powder coat each and every time, or, you know, becoming dust and getting out into the air, becoming these almost dust particles. Powder coating in and of itself is actually a more sustainable line than like plating too. That's why we like the powder coat option when we're developing this product line. And then within this product line in general, the materials can actually be stripped back down, safe for the environment to strip back down, and steel again can be recycled. The ribbons even can be recycled because they're made out of PET plastic. Okay. Something that's really hard to do with die cast, because zinc, you can only use about 20% recycled zinc in a new die cast piece. And that's if a manufacturing unit is doing it, because, you know, it just doesn't have the same durability anymore. Right. While steel is just recyclable 100% of its lifetime. You could recycle steel like 500 times and it's still good to go or more.
That's pretty impressive. I'm glad that there's steel on my car. Just for that reason. Just kidding. I'm like feeling a little bit sassy today for our listeners. That's really cool. Actually, it's kind of funny because as you were talking about like the sheets being used and then, you know, getting more out of each sheet, it made me think of Tetris and how like I think their mind, whoever came up with that idea, their mind must have like been thinking of Tetris at the time.
This individual is a very innovative person. I guess you could even say like, while you're testing these things, it's considered research and development and or R&D in short. R&D is actually a tax savings. So you can apply R&D and you kind of explain the philosophy behind it, what the cost. Crew, quiet. Sorry. The dog is totally barking. You probably can hear it. So the R&D is actually saving the company money in taxes because we're investing it into continuous improvement instead. And so once that continuous improvement comes to fruition, we're no longer saving money in the tax side of it, but you're not paying that money twice in a way. You're not spending that money twice.
Right. No, that makes perfect sense. I think that's really cool. And to have folks that can kind of dedicate a portion of their time to R&D is something that is just, I mean, it's so important, right? And it's helpful for the company, for the people around. I think it also, in a way, like promotes learning, right? Because when new things are tried, you learn not just what works, but also what doesn't work and what could we have shifted or modified to maybe make it work more effectively, right? And so in that sense, it's also learning. And I think that's just a really cool thing.
That's why I feel lean was pretty natural to implement because our people were already doing it and every department was doing it. It wasn't just like the laser and powder coating examples I gave. You know, I can't give all of my examples because, you know, our decoration team, like that's the bread and butter of our absolutely. And we're the only ones that do it. So we really can't share it. But I would say they've had the most improvements. And so we've seen these metals go from, you know, pretty basic to more intricate for less money than die cast. And it's really exciting to see. But then, yes, there is that whole just general, like, we want to learn, we want to improve. It's coming top down too. It's not just like it's in the managers and the staff, it's in the executive team. You know, my even me myself, like I'm applying ideas and I'm like, hey, what if you tried this? Like, I just give a suggestion. I know I'm not going to try the suggestion. And, you know, these stakeholders might know better than me.
Right.
My suggestion does come to fruition, I will say. But that's because I have a good technical expertise in what we do. I do believe in a technical expertise with whatever the company's doing. Even though I'm on the people side of things, I should understand what the company's doing.
Yeah, well, I imagine it makes you more effective because you are not then just wondering what in the heck you're talking about, what's die cast. You know what they're talking about, so you can actually be a part of the conversation more effectively. So I think that's really cool. And it's very clear to me in this conversation that you do have a lot of expertise in that area. And I appreciate you being willing to talk about it.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. I feel like I have a passion for it, but our people have a passion for it. And I know I mentioned people with a higher level of autonomy, people feel like they're making more of a difference. Well, in those examples I gave, people are truly making a difference. And it might be for the company that they care about, but if they care about the environmental difference they're making, or the customer difference, or just the process behind innovating and improving, then it's much more likely for someone to feel autonomous and to feel that value and passion for their work when they are working towards change.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, I completely agree.
Unless that, so people, people don't like change unless they're the one making it, usually, is what I said.
Yeah, that's fair. I don't know. I may be a little bit of a weirdo because I really like change. I think it's fun. But I'm also really spontaneous just in life. So I'm all up for trying different things randomly. So that probably it's just maybe a personality feature of mine.
Yeah.
Anyway, curious, I know as we kind of wrap up our conversation today, I just want to ask, how do you see lean evolving at Ashworth? Next few weeks, months, years, however you want to look at it. How do you see it evolving?
So I'm really excited. I will say we have a couple of Kaizen events strategically planned with Bob from GBMP to come in and work with our general staff so that those that aren't getting involved in lean can get involved in it. So obviously we have the people that are naturally a part of it, but we want to really hone in on the people that don't feel they have the autonomy yet. And so right now, that's kind of what we're targeting in our lean development. And that means these people are going to have amazing opportunities for growth if they show interest, if they show that they want to innovate, and if they can really solve problems and make those decisions. So I'm really excited to see what comes there. There'll be 2 events happening this summer. So I'm excited to see how that changes things. It might help us with some succession planning, like I was talking about earlier. But then separate from that, we're going to constantly be improving, especially with the tariff situation and the way the economy is going at the moment. People are concerned. Some of our industries aren't as affected at the moment, but we want to make sure they stay unaffected by us doing as much work we can internally to save our customers that money. And then anything that we are saving as well, that goes right back into our people. And so as people improve, the company improves. Company gets to put more money back into these people, whether that be raising wages, more employee initiatives, just more trainings. So I'm excited to see it continue to evolve. So we have those 2 Kaizen events planned. I definitely expect to see massive changes in the next 2 years. In the last 5 years, we've had massive changes each and every year. We've put about $3 million into this manufacturing unit as of now because of how much it's expanded and how much it's in demand. So excited to see it kind of blow up across the board. People, customers, product-wise, machinery-wise, lean is going to help build that culture surrounding growth.
Yeah, that is wonderful. Well, I'm excited to see where it all goes, and you'll have to make sure you give us some updates as you go along and as you get through some of these Kaizen events, and see if there's maybe some learnings that you're able and willing to share with our listeners. So, what do you think about wrapping up for today? I know we have some really good episodes coming up soon, but how does that sound?
Yeah, I think we definitely wrap up today. I know we're going to be talking a little bit about the pushback, I think, more to lean and to just general organizational development in the future. So for our listeners, definitely want to chime in on those. What do you want to learn there? And then if you have any questions for me about what we're doing at Ashworth Awards, please feel free to comment, to ask, to message us, email us. We'd be happy to hear from you, and I'd be happy to give you more insight because maybe my insights will help you apply it to your workplace.
That sounds great. Absolutely. Well, listeners, this concludes another intriguing episode of Organizational Sherlocks. I'm Elizabeth Fleming.
And I'm Morgan Ashworth, reminding you that the journey to success is an ongoing investigation.
Stay curious, stay strategic, and keep utilizing insights to decode your business mysteries.
Join us every Tuesday for your next Who Done It. This is Organizational Sherlocks closing today's case.
We'll see you next time.